अस्सलाम वालेकुम। प्रोग्राम एम्बेसी रोड में खुशामदीद। नाजरीन, हमारे साथ आज हैं पाकिस्तान में नॉर्वे के सफीर मोहतरमा सिसिलिए लांसवर्क। हम उनसे बात करेंगे पाकिस्तान और नॉर्वे के ताल्लुकात के हवाले से। नॉर्वे में बहुत बड़ी तादाद में पाकिस्तानी भी रहते हैं और वो वहाँ पे बहुत अहम किरदार अदा कर रहे हैं। नॉर्वे में पाकिस्तान और नॉर्वे के ताल्लुकात जो है इक़्तिसादी और तजारती शोबों में बड़ी अहमियत रखते हैं। उनसे इस हवाले से भी बात होगी और उसके अलावा जो आलमी मसला है दहशत गर्दी का, उस पर भी बात करेंगे। Ambassador, thank you very much for joining us in this program.
Pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Ambassador. How do you look at Pakistan-Norway relations at this moment?
We have a stronger and stronger relation, I think, between Norway and Pakistan. We have an active Pakistani population in Norway, which helps us, I think, establishing even better relations.
What is the size of the Pakistani community living in Norway? Because we hear a lot about people living in Norway and they send us a lot of money from there in terms of foreign remittances. What exactly is the number?
Well, it may not sound as a big number for Pakistanis, but since Norway is a small country with only 4.8 million people, the Pakistani population now, which is 33,000 around about, is not huge, but a significant population.
So what role exactly they are playing? Are they workers? They are educated people? They are doing white-collar jobs? What are they doing?
Well, when they arrived in the late 60s and beginning of the 70s, of course, they arrived being invited in as because of our need for labor. Now, of course, after all these years, they have developed as a community. And definitely they have sent their children to school. So today you see that we have Norwegian Pakistanis as prominent members of our political system. They are lawyers, they are not the least doctors. A lot of female Pakistanis take their medicine education. So now you feel them in all parts of society.
Do you think that this Pakistani community which is living in Norway is integrated into the Norwegian society, or there is some kind of discomfort there, or what?
Well, I think the word integration has changed meaning through times. I think when we had people coming from foreign cultures in the 60s, 70s, I think we had a different understanding what integration could mean. We simply thought they could all become Norwegians. But of course, learning to live with people with another background, we have developed an understanding that yes, we can integrate, but still it means that people have to be able to keep their cultural tradition and still being good Norwegians. So I would say yes, they're integrated, but still they are keeping their values, identity, religion, definitely also. So yes, they are integrated, but yes, there are some challenges still when there are two different cultures meeting in society.
You talked about religion. Islam is a religion. Most of the Pakistanis are Muslims. And do they face any problem in this regard? Because generally, I'm not talking of Norway alone, but generally here in Pakistan, there's a feeling that anti-Islamic sentiments are growing in that part of Europe.
I think the media is exaggerating both the problems with Islam, if I may call it that, and the anti kind of attitude among us and other Europeans. Unfortunately, that is sometimes how the media works. It's exaggerating issues, so the picture just looks black and white. I think, of course, there are people who are still skeptical about Islam, not knowing too much about it, and only reading the more extremist version, which does not really represent the religion at all. But yes, that is still an issue. I think we have to be clear about that. But There's no way around. We have to develop this understanding further.
The unfortunate incident which took place in which a Christian fundamentalist killed people,
Yes.
how do you look at it? What is your reading of that incident?
Well, we're still asking ourselves question how a person could do this, and nobody really has the answer yet. How one person can stand there out looking at innocent young people and simply killing them face to face. I mean, what kind of person can do that? So there's a lot of personality into this issue. It looks like it's a kind of one-man show and not a kind of organization standing behind him, even though he had, I would say, extremist views, this man, and funding his action upon that. We still have to see, I think, when the trial goes on, that will give us a better picture what actually this was all about.
But this is not a reflection of a larger sentiments of people in that country. I think you term it as an individual act.
I would call this an individual act. He represented himself. I'm not saying that there are no other extremists, rightist extremists in Norway. They are. But it's not like he belonged to any organization or movement that also hold the same views as he does. He insists, I know in his paper that was issued on the internet, that he belonged to some international networks and so on. But so far it seems that it is highly exaggerated. This was, I would say, a one-man show.
Norway is considered to be a welfare state, a welfare country. Do you foresee any challenge of the kind that the US and other European countries are facing right at this moment because Occupy Wall?
This time check is brought to you by
सुप्रीम चाय सेहतमंद है। ब्रुक बॉन्ड सुप्रीम, तंदुरुस्त रहें, मस्त रहें।
Right, and the system will continue to grow, and there'll be no big challenge to it.
Well, of course, it depends very much upon economy. That's what we see. I mean, when you see huge number of people without job, that's when they start, of course, to worry about their future, their family, and you see protests, and which is well understandable. And like in Greece, this is a major issue. As I said, we have a solid economic situation in Norway, but of course we are also affected by the economic development of Europe, United States, the world, but first of all Europe, because most of our trade goes to Europe. So it affects us, of course. But it will not affect us, I believe, seriously, unless we see a major collapse in the world, which I really hope not, of course. I foresee that we will keep our stable support for a welfare system, which is widely supported, I would say, by all political parties in Norway.
What is the main earning of Norway? The export, oil export, and fish, and seafood, and what else?
Well, of course, our oil and gas is important. We don't use our gas ourselves at all, because we only use hydropower for electricity, so we can sell it all abroad. And then, of course, we have the fish farming business and fishery sector as such, which is also important for us. But apart from that, I would also point at the development of high technology. This does not employ a lot of people, but it gives high value, of course. So, since after all we are, it's a highly educated society, but also with high salaries compared to other countries, we have to develop this sector to be able to keep up our, I think, living standard. So that is our fortune, but also our challenge to always try to keep up front in high technology.
Ambassador will continue this discussion. नाज़रीन, एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं। ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम पाकिस्तान में नॉर्वे की सफीर से मजीद बातचीत करेंगे, पाकिस्तान और नॉर्वे के दरमियान इक्तिसादी ताउन पर खास तौर पर। Political and economic and commercial. But what are the prospects of developing the economic and commercial relations further between the two countries?
I would like to think that we in the future can develop our cooperation, particularly in fields where we have experience and technology, and where you have needs in Pakistan, and I'm thinking particularly about the hydropower sector. This is where we have the necessary resources and where there is a great interest also from the Pakistani side for investments. But at the same time, I must say that the energy sector in Pakistan at the moment is also one of the more complicated sectors. So, but still, this is an area that I would like to work to develop to see if we can do more. We're also looking at the possibility also to develop cooperation in the fishery sectors. The waters south of Pakistan and the waters west of or north of Norway are very different though. So we have to respect the differences, but still we hope that there may be some areas here we can develop.
Pakistan is suffering from energy crisis, you know very well, Ambassador. In what way you can help us out? You said that Pakistani energy sector is very complicated. In what respect it is complicated?
Well, I'm not an expert and a newcomer to Pakistan, so I cannot go in detail, but I do see there are challenges now to deliver enough electricity here in Pakistan to the industry sector and also for the public in general. And there are some organizational challenges for the Pakistanis themselves, I think, to solve. But when it comes to developing the hydropower sector, because you have a lot of hydropower capacity in this country which has not been developed. I think this is where we may be able to cooperate and develop something together with Pakistan.
The Norwegian companies who produce electricity through hydropower, are they ready to invest in Pakistan in these circumstances, or they're reluctant?
Well, for the moment, we have no concrete plans that, it's on the step to sign any contract or anything. So this is really something we have to develop because, yes, it is a challenge, I think, for foreign investors at the moment to see actually the possible future profit in the sector before perhaps things are organized a little better.
What other areas, Ambassador, you have identified where Pakistan and Norway can enhance the cooperation, especially in the field of technology, in the field of economics, in the field of commerce?
Well, in the commerce sector, I think we are importing goods from Pakistan, same kind of products perhaps that other European countries need. So there are always some smaller developments in different sectors there, where you certainly have the potential, I think, to export more goods to Norway, both in the textile and the agriculture, food sector, and so on. So that is more the kind of trade things. We constantly are in contact with companies, also from the Pakistani side, seeing how we can help them actually to export more to Norway, which we would certainly be glad to help with. Apart from that, I think the same trade rules we have for Pakistan as with other European countries, apart from a few things, because we're not a member of the EU, we have some restrictions in the import of agricultural items, I must say, that may create some problems also.
What's the reason for that? For the agriculture products, why can't they be imported from Pakistan? What are the...
No, it has nothing to do with Pakistan, actually. It's more that we have some restrictions, or I would say custom levels for importing agricultural products that could somehow compare with some Norwegian products. So it's nothing to do with Pakistan, really. Where there are the restrictions, just some general restrictions. So it's not all the same rules for the EU in this sector. But I think it doesn't affect that much the export from Pakistan, because you are exporting goods that we don't produce ourselves anyway. We don't have wonderful mangoes and things like that up there. So,
Ambassador, the European Union granted us some concessions in the field of commerce because European Union is importing a lot of textile material from Pakistan. And is Norway ready to do that, because Pakistan has a special role to play and is playing a role against the war, in the war against terror?
Well, to take the import issue, I mean, we are in the so-called same economic area as the EU countries, which means that we more or less have all the same rules as if for import-export as we EU member country, apart from what I said on the agricultural sector and also in the fishery sector, where we have some specific special national rules for Norway. But apart from that, we have the same kind of import rules as the EU, more or less. So I think anything that could be any kind of trade agreements or rules you may agree on with the EU will also apply to Norway. So, I mean, and we have nothing against that. On the contrary, we'll be positive.
Norway is also helping Pakistan through NGOs in various social sectors. Are you satisfied with what you have been doing in Pakistan, or you want to change the methodology, or you want to focus on some other areas in which traditionally Norway has been focusing?
Well, we always have to look at our work here, of course, to see that it's efficient, that we get as much out of it as we think we should get. So we should always have an eye on our existing projects and contacts to see if it's the best. But I don't foresee that we will make some major change in this sector. I think we are involved in cooperation also with Pakistani authorities in the health sector, in education, and we are also involved with civil society organizations. And in Norway, gender issues is a big and important issue, so we'd like to support organizations also working for women's issue here in Pakistan, and I think we will continue. And I would also like to mention an issue which is important for us here, and that is to cooperate in the cultural sector. We have some very good cooperating progress with cultural institutions in Pakistan, which I think is very important. I think to support cultural issues, helping Pakistan also to develop their knowledge and recognition of their history is very important. And this is perhaps one of the most fun sectors to be involved in, and also because personally I think it's very important.
In what way Norway can help empower the women in Pakistan? I mean, you are doing it through the civil society organizations, NGOs, and what is your proposal, or do you have some ideas as to how to empower the women in Pakistan?
Well, I don't think we should exaggerate the role we can play. We should do our little thing to support the Pakistanis themselves who are working for this. And there are some fantastic organizations in this country, I think, and women working on this issue. So I think first of all is for us to support the Pakistanis themselves, to find their way, how they want it. But there are different views in this country as well, which we respect. But still we think it would be positive to see some development in some areas where we think really women deserve more attention and more rights. Okay,
we'll take another break. एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक के बाद नाज़रीन हम दोबारा गुफ्तगू का सिलसिला शुरू करेंगे पाकिस्तान में नॉर्वे की सफीर से. Welcome back. Ambassador, war on terror is a global phenomena. I mean, terrorism is a phenomena which is affecting the entire world. And particularly this part of the world is affected most. And Pakistan is playing a frontline state in this war against terrorism. How do you rate, how do you look at Pakistan's role in this war?
I think Pakistan now plays a very important role. I mean, Pakistan is situated now in a part of the world which is an area full of challenges, of course. We have, of course, your big neighbor Afghanistan, where Norway also is involved in ISAF with 500 forces. So also in that sense, this is important to Norway, the development in this part of the world. The terrorism as such, as you say, is global and it affects us. but also specifically the development in Afghanistan and Pakistan's role related to this is very important.
Afghanistan, after 10 years, now thinking is going on. The players are thinking that the NATO and American troops should withdraw from Afghanistan, and a transition plan is being thought about, and the Bonn conference is to be held to actually give a kind of final shape to the transition plan. You think that Afghanistan is ready for the transition?
We don't have any other choice. We have to succeed in a good transition plan, and we have to work on this together now. That's what we actually are doing these days, I think, very actively in many international forums to find a successful transition plan. We cannot continue just as we had continued for 10 years. It's not possible. So that is the challenge for us all now, to go together more actively to work on this transition plan. And there again, the active role of Pakistan is very important.
But some critics believe that this transition plan has so many flaws. Once NATO and the American troops leave Afghanistan, there could be a civil war, there could be an internal fight, and there could be chaos in Afghanistan. And so the forces should not leave Afghanistan by year 2014, the deadline set by NATO. What's your view on that?
Well, if I had the answer to all that, I think I should have the Nobel Peace Prize. It's a very difficult question, and we're all looking for the answers at the moment. I think there's no doubt that the forces, international forces, little by little will withdraw. Nobody at the moment, I believe, has the answer on the exact date. If they all will withdraw absolutely before 2014, but that they are withdrawing, I think this is the future we really have to plan for, all of us, and understand that we have to work on this together to make this work. But very important, even if the military forces are leaving, it does not mean that the international community leaves Afghanistan. We have this huge responsibility to assist Afghanistan to develop as a nation for many years after that.
You think that the international community will carry out this commitment? Because when the Soviets left Afghanistan, the international community turned its back on Afghanistan. Do you think that this time around, the international community and major players in the international arena will not repeat that mistake?
I don't think there is a chance that the international community can turn its back on Afghanistan, really. I know, I definitely, of course, can speak on behalf of my own government, and I know they do not intend to do so. But I think I also may dare to say that it also goes for other important nations, much more important than us in the international community. We see the challenges of this area to the world as such. So just leaving it, all of us.
Afghanistan is a country where the women particularly are very deprived and very, very backward. Do you have any plan, Norway particularly, to empower the women in Afghanistan?
Well, we give a lot of assistance to Afghanistan, and a large part of that assistance goes to projects to empower women. And we will certainly continue to do that. To give girls the chance to go to school, of course, is the most important thing. And it's not only important for women, it's important for the whole family, that the mother in the family has some education when she's bringing up her children. So this is very basic for us. I think anywhere we are in the world and seeing the needs in Afghanistan, we will definitely continue to do our share of this.
Exactly
job.
what Norway's troops, you mentioned 500 troops of Norway in Afghanistan, what are they doing? They are combating or they are engaged in some other role?
Well, I cannot go into detail, I think, about the role they are posted in the northern areas. Had the main post in Meymaneh, it's called. I never been there myself, but but it's in the northern area. It used to be the part of Afghanistan which used to be more calm. It was the southern part which was more violent, but I think with the development in Afghanistan, also where the Norwegian troops are, unfortunately. So I wouldn't say they are in the combat zone, but they are now in an area which is very violent, and of course it affects their work.
Norway is also a part of this international coalition. So by year 2014, when the decision is made to call it a day in Afghanistan, Norway will also withdraw the troops from Afghanistan.
Well, of course, all the countries now having troops in ISAF discuss this together and coordinate this effort, because that's how we have to do it. It has to be coordinated among us, because these troops are working together in ISAF. So it's not like Norway is just there and another country there, another country there. We are cooperating. So whatever we do, we have to coordinate it. It's not like one country can stay behind, because its role will not function. So we'll see. It's still an ongoing discussion.
Some analysts believe that unless the root causes of terrorism and militancy are addressed, this is not going to go away. And the root causes are poverty and ignorance. So do you think that the world is aware of this and they will be addressing this issue so that the issue of terrorism and militancy is rooted out completely?
I think there is a great understanding of the issue. I don't think poverty and so on is the only reason for violence and terrorism, but it certainly is a very important part of the issue. The acknowledgement is there, and how to solve it, of course, nobody has an easy answer, but we have constantly to fight it. We have to fight it globally. Pakistan has to fight it also in its own country, and we also have to assist a country like Pakistan to try to fight this. But I think we have learned over the years that it's not only building schools. The issue is more complicated than that.
Okay, we'll talk about it more. नाज़रीन, एक मुख्तसर ब्रेक लेते हैं और ब्रेक से वापसी के बाद हम पाकिस्तान में नॉर्वे की सफीर से मज़ीद गुफ्तगू जारी रखेंगे. Welcome back. Ambassador, you said that this is a very complicated issue, the issue of terrorism and militancy. What are the other complications? Is this the clash of civilization, as is being claimed by some of the analysts, some of the intellectuals in the West, or your view is different from that?
Well, I should be careful here. I'm not an expert, but I'm a little bit careful about using the term clash of a civilization. But of course, as this globe is becoming smaller in the sense that we interact very actively, and people learn about how other people are living. You see the differences in your life. It makes larger claims also for people, and more mobility and so on. And also bigger differences between poor and rich, I think. All these issues together creates uncertainty. And it is not an easy answer to this uncertainty which is developed. Of course, lack of funds simply for having food on the table is the biggest uncertainty, we may say. But it's not only that, it also has to do with identity. So it is challenging when you have communities perhaps that have lived more secluded in their world for many centuries perhaps, are more open to totally new challenges. And that our challenges, you may say, come from our global economic system these days, which is based on dynamism, continuous changes. I think this explains some of it, but it's a very complicated issue.
So how to address it? I mean, if there's a big gap between haves and have-nots, that can be bridged through bringing more help to the backward areas, poor areas in the world, and that will balance it out?
Well, I think when Norway started with its development assistance in the 60s, I think we started, we were perhaps naive that we could solve the economic problems of a country giving development assistance. I think we've learned through the years that yes, assistance is important, and we still give high importance to this, continuing giving a higher percentage of our BNP to development assistance. It will not solve the problems as such. But having an economy, a global economy these days based on trade and competition, it is the economy and the business and so on, the country itself, that has to be developed. Assistance can be a little part of it, but definitely not all.
And do you think that the pattern of current, the giving of assistance to poor countries, because there is a criticism also that the funds which are coming to the developing countries or backward countries from the developed countries like Norway are not properly used. They're not being used judiciously, and they're not being used properly, and the benefit is not going to the people who you want to benefit.
That's always a challenge, yes. I can see that. You have the challenge of reaching really out to the people, and also to help the government of the country to be able to organize its own economy. I think we've seen that in many African countries where we have given development assistance in many years. These were poorly organized countries, some of them, and of course an important part is to development the state itself with its institutions, so little by little they can handle their own economy, development, administration and so on. So that is one thing, but also then to make sure you reached out in the villages so the money reach out to the people on the ground. That is what we want, but at the same time we see that expertise is needed, and if the country does not have that expertise itself, we have to bring it along. I think one example is, if we should go into some kind of cooperation with Pakistan in, let's say, fish farming. Of course, we have to bring our own experts, because that's what Pakistan wants of us, to see how did we develop our fish farming sector. Well, then we have to bring our own experts here, to help in that process. And then the challenge is, of course, to make sure that the knowledge of these experts reach the
local population,
yes, in a manner that they can use the knowledge. And we don't always succeed in that. There has been many development projects that have not been successful. I think we have to admit that. Where this has not been successful, the gap between, the expertise coming out and who they should reach, that this really gap is, or this challenge is met, that they really can give some knowledge that can be used in the country.
Ambassador, you have been here in Pakistan for a short period of time, but what is your take on Pakistan, its political system, its economic system, and you think that it needs some drastic changes, or it can be rectified through, adjustments and through reforms?
Well, I've been here, as you say, very short, so I shall be very careful on saying anything on the political and economic system here. I mean, I don't have the expertise here at all. I think what is important now that you're moving towards your second democratic election in this country. I think that is very important. So of course we look with great interest to how this process now is going. It means a lot, I think, that you're going to have successful elections, so you again are able to establish
keep the democracy on the track.
Yes, this I think is important, and that is what's going to be of great interest the period I'm here, to see that this is moving in a positive direction. Always with a lot of noise, because that's democracy. So, but still, this is important.
नाज़रीन, आज आपने गुफ्तगू सुनी है पाकिस्तान में नॉर्वे की सफ़ीर मोहतरमा सिसिलिया लांसवर्ग से, और उन्होंने गुफ्तगू की है पाकिस्तान और नॉर्वे के ताल्लुकात के हवाले से, और क्या इम्कानात हैं पाकिस्तान और नॉर्वे के ताल्लुकात को मजीद मुस्तहकम बनाने में और उनमें वसअत पैदा करने के हवाले से। उन्होंने वॉर ऑन टेरर के ऊपर भी अपना पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू दिया है, और वो कह रही हैं कि वो जो सिविलाइजेशनल क्लैश है, क्लैश ऑफ सिविलाइजेशंस, उस पे वो यकीन नहीं करती। उनका ख्याल है कि अगर मुआशी इस्तेकाम हो और मुआशी तवाज़ुन कायम किया जाए तो ये जो मगरब और मशरक़ के दरमियान कशीदगी है ये ख़त्म हो सकती है। एम्बेसडर, थैंक यू वेरी मच फॉर बीइंग विद अस। थैंक यू। इसी के साथ ये प्रोग्राम ख़त्म होता है। जावेद सिद्दीक को इजाज़त दीजिए। खुदा हाफिज़।